Hey guys, this is Drew here with Studio 28, and today we are going to be talking about compression. This is probably going to be my favorite video that we do all year. So let's hop into Logic and I'll show you what this is. All right, so we're here in Logic and I've opened up a session. This is one of my original songs, and I've got open two different compressors here. You'll see that they look very similar, but they also kind of look a little bit different. So on this left compressor here, this is the 1176 from Universal Audio. This is their plugin that models their actual hardware unit. This looks the exact same as the hardware unit. And then the one on the right is just your standard stock plugin from Logic that is Logic's version of the 1176. And you'll notice a couple things look very similar and then a couple of things look pretty different. So let's talk about this little graph meter thing here. So this is going to show you how much gain reduction you're getting. And then that's basically what this does. So those are the same. You can also have a graph here that shows you a different view. And then here on the right hand side of that, it'll actually show you the gain reduction. But I really like this view just simply because it looks like the 1176 itself. So a couple of similarities here. You've got your attack and release knobs. You've got your attack and release knobs. There's no auto button here. You've got one on the Logic. That's different. What that basically does is, however you've got your compressor set, you can use this auto attack and release function just to help with that. And then you've got this makeup knob here. You don't have a makeup knob here, but you do have an output knob, and that they do the exact same thing. They're just labeled different. So anything that says makeup or output or gain, anything like that, that's going to be the same feature across the board. On the Logic one, you actually have your auto gain. You got a couple of different features here, whereas on the 1176 you don't. And then you've got your ratio knob. You can set this however you want. You do have ratio here, but it's just buttons. So you've got 4-to-1, 8-to-1, 12-to-1, 20-to-1. And then there also is an all buttons in feature, which is just like serious extreme compression. And then the biggest difference is you have a threshold knob here. You can set whatever your threshold you want is. Whereas this one, it does not have that. There is a fixed threshold, and we're going to talk about more of that here in a second. But there's a fixed threshold here, so you would just simply turn up the input until you get the amount of gain reduction you want or compression you want, and then you'll just dial this in to taste. So now that we see kind of what's different, what's the same on all this, let's actually dive in and take a look at what all of this means. So your threshold, even though this doesn't have a threshold knob, it still has a threshold. But a threshold tells the compressor when to start compressing. So where here you actually set the threshold to where you want it to start, this one you'll, like I said, turn in the input knob. So your threshold, it tells the compressor when to actually start compressing. Your ratio tells the compressor how much to compress when the audio hits and exceeds that threshold that you just set. The attack time tells the compressor how fast or how slow to reach the maximum amount of compression per those parameters that you just set. And then the release tells the compressor how fast or how slow to stop compressing per those parameters that you set. And then lastly is the makeup gain, or that output knob. It just tells the compressor how loud you want that audio to be after all the compression happens. So now that we kind of have a basic understanding of what all of these knobs do, let me show you how to dial this in. Super fun, super easy, and very effective. So with this being a compression video, there's no other processing on this vocal track other than what we're fixing to do right now. So there's no EQ, there's no reverb, there's no nothing, just this compressor. Here I am, come take my hand. So the first thing that we're going to do is turn this input knob until we get this needle about where we want. This is how much gain reduction we're getting. And I want this to average about -3. And there's going to be instances where it will probably go over that -3. And then there's going to be instances where the needle's hardly going to move. And that's okay as long as that average is sitting at about -3. We just want this compressor to work when it's supposed to and be essentially non-existent when it's not supposed to. Let's have a listen. Here I am, come take my hand. So yeah, I'm going to dial this input down because we're maxing out this VU meter. Won't you care? I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. Won't you care? I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. Won't you care? I am, come take my... Yeah, that's good there. So notice how soft that vocal is. That's because our output knob, we've got it set way down here to like -37 or so. So I'm going to turn this off and listen to how loud that audio gets again. Here I am, come take my hand. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust this output. And it'll probably be roughly about here. But you'll hear that audio get quite a bit louder as I dial this in. And the goal of this is when the compressor is off or on, you want to not be able to tell a perceived loudness difference, if that makes sense. They want to have the same approximate volume when the compressor's off versus on. Let's dial in that output knob. Here I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. Won't you care? I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. Won't you care? I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. Won't you care? I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. Beautiful. And then, like I said, you'll notice that needle, sometimes it'll go over that -3, and then there's sometimes where it doesn't even move. And you can actually look at this wave file here and see where like the bigger parts of this audio is, and then you'll see like some smaller parts. And on the smaller parts is when that needle doesn't hardly move at all. And that's simply because we don't want any gain reduction on those quieter parts, just on the louder ones. So the attack and release time, my typical settings that I like to use for a vocal is the quickest release and then a slow to, medium attack. And I kind of jumped the gun here. I got these set when I was supposed to be showing you the input, which is fine. But let me play around with these and show you what these do. Here I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. So with the fastest attack, you'll notice that there's quite a bit of like loss of energy, it seems like. And that's because when that audio hits that fixed threshold, that compressor is just jumping the gun. Like as soon as it hits, it's turning it down. And if I use a slow attack, you'll kind of see that needle take a second to reach that maximum amount of compression. Take a listen. Here I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. And then here's with it as fast as it'll go. Won't you here I am, come take my hand. So I had this set to about here roughly, about 3. And the way that you read these knobs is kind of like a gas pedal. Think of, if this was like a speedometer, 10 miles an hour is a lot slower than 70 miles an hour. And then same with the release. 10 is a lot slower than 70. So as you press that gas pedal, you get faster. That speedometer, getting up there to that interstate. Then if you ease off the gas, you'll start slowing down. So that's how these work. And then the release, that's just how fast or how slow you want that compression to go away. Here I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. So you can see with the slowest release here that it's taken quite a bit longer to get back. And there's certain spots on here where I don't want any compression, and we're still sitting at -3 because the release is too slow. So that's why I like to put that at the fastest release, get rid of that compression as quick as I can, so that way in spots where I don't need it, it's not there. Here I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. Especially on the word side right there, you can definitely hear, or see rather, that needle is not moving at all. And that's simply just because that piece of audio is a little bit quieter than the rest, so I don't want any gain reduction on that. That's basically how you set up a compressor. Now, there are all kinds of different compressors out there. They all function the same way, like all the knobs do the same things, but there's a lot of different compressors that just have different characteristics to them. So whatever you do, when you're working on a project, don't pull up a compressor and use these exact same settings. It's going to depend on the compressor. It's going to depend on the song. It's going to depend on the vocalist. It's going to depend on the microphone you use. It's going to depend on the room that you're in. So this is definitely, by all means, not a use these settings type of thing. That is not what you want to do. You want to use your ears. And a good rule of thumb is if it sounds good, it is good. That's the way I see it, at least. And I'll show you one more compressor here. So on a vocal track specifically, I love using the LA2A in conjunction with the 1176. And so you'll see right here, this is a completely different compressor, and there's not a lot going on here. There's no input knob you can see. There's no output knob that you can see. But if you look close, this peak reduction, this is going to act as your input knob. And this gain, this is going to act as your output knob. Okay? And then this is going to kind of be your ratio, so to speak. You have a compression setting and a limiting setting. Compressor, limiter. And what that means is this is going to be what you're using for like individual tracks, and this is going to be what you're going to use for like a drum bus or like a mix bus, something kind of like that. Or like if you're using parallel compression, which that's a video for another day. Right now, we're just doing this as serial compression. So we're going to switch this back to compressor, and I'm going to turn this peak reduction meter, and then I want this needle to average somewhere between -2 and -3. And you'll see that this needle moves a lot slower than this one. And that's simply because You've got this is a FET compressor and this is a opto compressor. They do very different things, but they work super well together. So let's dial this one in. Here I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. Here I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. Here I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your. Here I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. Yeah. And then, like I said, this gain knob is going to be the same as the output. We just want to make sure that that perceived volume is the same, whether the compressor's off versus on. Here I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. Here I am, come take my hand. I promise that I'll never leave your side. Here I... Yeah, that's how you dial in a compressor. So as you can see, these two compressors, they look different, they respond different, but the process is still the same. So get time to know your compressors, get time to know their characteristics, and you know, when you get ready to do an actual mix, then you're not stuck wondering, well, this is, what do I do here? You know, it's not daunting anymore. So that would be my advice. The more that you get to know your compressors, the better they will treat you in a mix. Well, guys, I hope that kind of helps demystify some of that confusion that you might have in terms of compressors. I know when I first started out, I was just kind of out in left field, like, how do I even use this thing? So I hope this little breakdown helps kind of clear some of that up for you. And you know, here in the future, we're going to be looking at the anatomy of like an EQ, doing stuff with reverb and delay and other just basic tools that you might need for your average mix. And then once we get kind of all that out of the way, then we're going to do something fun. And I've got a mixing series that I'm working on that we're actually going to dive in and do a complete mix from scratch, from start to finish. And it's going to be a lot of fun. If you've made it this far in the video, I just want to say thank you so much. Do me a favor, just so I know who all has watched up to this point, comment the word piano down below. And you just have to leave it at that. Just type piano. And don't forget to also hit that like button and subscribe, turn the bell notifications on so you never miss a video. And one last thing before we leave, I've got a brand new website with some cool gear in my store. Help yourself. It would go a long ways to help out this channel. And that's all I've got for you today. So keep making great music. I love you. We'll see you in the next one.